August 17, 1944. 2:43 p.m., 11,000 feet above the Celebes Sea. Second Lieutenant James Robert Mackenzie grips the navigation table as the B-24 Liberator shudders through monsoon turbulence. Rain hammers against the aluminum fuselage. The compass needle swings wildly. Outside the plexiglass nose, clouds the color of wet concrete swallow everything. Mackenzie squints at the map spread before him, the paper already damp from condensation. Numbers swim before his eyes. Longitude 124 degrees east. Or is it west? The map is oriented with south at the top. Standard Japanese cartography, captured 3 weeks earlier from a down-zero pilot near Morotai. Mackenzie has been staring at this thing for 40 minutes, and his head pounds. He calls out a course correction to the pilot. Captain Douglas Doug Hayes, at the controls 15 feet behind him, banks the bomber 5 degrees starboard. The 9 other B-24s in the formation follow. They're hunting for a fuel storage facility. Intelligence says it's somewhere on Halmahera Island. 3 reconnaissance flights have found nothing. This is attempt number 4. Mackenzie checks his calculations again. The numbers don't match what he remembers from the briefing. Something is wrong. But in about 6 minutes, he's going to make a decision that will change everything. What happens next will alter the course of the Pacific Air Campaign in the Dutch East Indies. By the end of this mission, 47 Japanese aircraft will burn on the ground. 200,000 gallons of aviation fuel will detonate in a fireball visible from 80 miles away, and the Imperial Japanese Navy will lose its primary refueling station for operations in the southern Philippines. All because one 23-year-old navigator from Terre Haute, Indiana, can't read a map the right way up. But first, let's talk about how James Mackenzie became a navigator in the first place. December 1941, Terre Haute, Indiana. The radio in Clabber's hardware store crackles with news from Pearl Harbor. James Robert Mackenzie, standing behind the counter in a canvas apron, stops mid-sentence. He's been explaining the difference between 16-penny and 20-penny nails to Mrs. Henderson. She's not listening anymore. Nobody in the store is listening to anything except the voice coming through the speaker. Japanese aircraft, battleships burning, thousands dead. Mackenzie is 20 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall, 152 pounds, with brown hair already receding at the temples and wire-rimmed glasses that slide down his nose when he sweats. His father owns a hardware store. His grandfather owned it before that. Mackenzie was supposed to take it over someday. He's worked the register since he was 14. He knows the inventory better than he knows the streets of his own town. Paint in aisle 3. Pipe fittings in the back corner. Lumber out in the yard under the green tarp. But now he's thinking about something else entirely. January 15th, 1942. Indianapolis, Indiana. The Army recruiting office smells like floor wax and cigarettes. Mackenzie sits across from Staff Sergeant Howard Brennan, who looks at the papers Mackenzie has filled out. College? Brennan asks. Mackenzie shakes his head. 2 years at Indiana State Teachers College. He says, mathematics major. Had to drop out when my mother got sick. Brennan nods. Can you work with numbers? Calculations? Geometry? Mackenzie says yes. He doesn't mention that he dropped out because he was failing calculus. He doesn't mention that spatial reasoning has never been his strong suit. He's better with inventory and ordering and the kind of practical arithmetic you use at a hardware store. But the Army needs navigators. They need them desperately. The Air Corps is expanding faster than they can train people. Brennan stamps the papers. You'll report to Maxwell Field, Alabama on February 2nd for basic training. After that, if you qualify navigation school, Mackenzie qualifies. Barely. April through October 1942. Hondo Army Airfield, Texas. Navigation school is 18 weeks of mathematical torture. Celestial navigation. Dead reckoning. Radio direction finding. Pilotage. Mackenzie struggles through every module. His classmates grasp concepts he has to read 4 times. Lieutenant Harold Fisher, the chief instructor, pulls him aside in week 9. Mackenzie, you're in the bottom third of this class. If you don't improve, you wash out. Mackenzie stays up past midnight every night, studying star charts by flashlight in the barracks. He memorizes formulas. He practices plotting courses on training maps until his hands cramp. He learns to use a sextant, a drift meter, a compass. The problem is always the same. He second-guesses himself. He gets anxious. When he's anxious, he makes mistakes. In week 14, during a practice navigation exercise over West Texas, he miscalculates wind drift and sends his training bomber 30 miles off course. They end up over Abilene instead of San Angelo. The pilot has to radio for directions back to base. Lieutenant Fisher calls him in again. "Mackenzie, I'm going to pass you." But barely. You scored 71% on your final exam. Passing is 70. You're technically qualified. But son, you need to double-check everything. Triple-check. Your instincts aren't good. Mackenzie graduates on October 23rd, 1942. He pins on his Navigator wings. He doesn't tell anyone that he knows he shouldn't be wearing them. November 1942 through June 1944. Various assignments, United States and Pacific Theater. Mackenzie spends 8 months navigating cargo flights across the continental United States. Routine milk runs. Nothing that could get anyone killed. His evaluations are always the same. Adequate, competent, requires supervision. In July 1943, he ships out to Pacific. He's assigned to the 380th Bombardment Group, based initially in Australia, later moving to Fenton Field on the Northern Territory. He flies 22 combat missions. All of them are straightforward. Follow the formation. Follow the lead navigator. Stay on the radio. Mackenzie has never been the lead navigator. He's always been backup. The guy who double-checks someone else's work. The guy who calls out course corrections when the primary navigator goes to the relief tube or gets motion sick. But on August 17, 1944, everything changes. August 16, 1944. Fenton Field, Northern Territory, Australia. The briefing tent is hot. 40 officers crowd onto folding chairs. Colonel William Beasley stands next to a map pinned to a corkboard. He taps a location on Halmahera Island with his pointer. Intelligence reports a major fuel depot here. Grid coordinates Quebec 749er. We've sent 3 reconnaissance flights. They found nothing. But Ultra intercepts confirm it exists. Ultra, that means decoded Japanese radio transmissions. That means the depot is there, even if nobody can find it. Tomorrow, Beasley continues, we send 10 B-24s. Heavy payload. If we find this depot, we destroy it. The Japanese are staging fighter operations out of Halmahera to harass our supply lines to the Philippines. No fuel means no fighters. Lieutenant Robert Cassidy, the squadron's best navigator, raises his hand. Sir, if 3 recon flights couldn't find it, how are we supposed to? Beasley grimaces. That's your job, Lieutenant. Find it. But Cassidy won't be on the mission. At 11:30 p.m. that night, he comes down with dysentery. Violent, incapacitating dysentery. He's in a latrine every 15 minutes. By 6 a.m., he can't walk. The mission launches at 8:15 a.m. Captain Hayes needs a navigator. Mackenzie is the backup. He's never been lead navigator on a combat mission. He's about to be. August 17th, 1944. 7:45 a.m. Fenton Field flight line. Hayes finds Mackenzie eating powdered eggs in the mess tent. You're up, Mac. Cassidy's down. You're lead nav. Mackenzie stops chewing. Lead? Sir, I've never... Hayes cuts him off. You'll be fine. Just follow the briefing coordinates. Quebec 749er. We fly north-northwest, hit Halmahera's eastern coast. Turn west, find the depot. Easy. Mackenzie nods. He doesn't feel fine. His hands are already shaking. At 8:05 a.m., he climbs into the nose of Hayes's B-24, calls sign Dixie Bell. The bombardier, Lieutenant Frank Morrison, is already at his station. Morrison grins. First time in the big chair, Mac? Mackenzie adjusts his headset. Yeah. Morrison slaps him on the shoulder. You'll do great. At 8:17 a.m., 10B, 24 Liberators roar down the runway and climb into the morning sky. The flight north is routine. Clear weather. Good visibility. Mackenzie plots their course with trembling hands. He checks the coordinates 3 times. Quebec 749er. Longitude 128 degrees 12 minutes east. Latitude 0 degrees 47 minutes north. They cross the Arafura Sea. The bombers fly at 11,000 feet. After 90 minutes, the mountains of Halmahera appear on the horizon, volcanic peaks shrouded in jungle. Hayes's voice crackles over the intercom. "Mac, give me a heading to the target." Mackenzie spreads a captured Japanese map on his navigation table. This is where it starts to go wrong. The map is oriented with south at the top. Japanese military maps often are. Mackenzie knows this. He was briefed on this. But he's anxious. He's tired. He's been staring at American maps his whole career. American maps have north at the top. Always, his brain automatically flips the map. He reads it the way he's read every map for 2 years. South is north. North is south. He plots the course to Quebec 749er, but he plots it backwards. Instead of directing Hayes to the eastern coast of Halmahera and then west, he directs him to the western coast. Then east, the exact opposite of the briefing plan. Heading 270 degrees, skipper. Mackenzie calls out, "West." Hayes banks the formation west. Which brings us back to August 17, 1944, 2:43 p.m., 11,000 feet above the Celebes Sea. Mackenzie stares at the map. Something gnaws at him. The coastline out the window doesn't match what he expects. They should be seeing the eastern shore of Halmahera. Steep cliffs, deep bays, but he's seeing something different. Gentler slopes, wider beaches. He picks up the map, rotates it. His stomach drops. Oh, God! South is at the top. He's been reading it upside down. They've flown to the wrong side of the island. They're 40 miles off course. He keys the intercom. "Captain Hayes, I screwed up. We're on the west coast, not the east." I read the map backwards. There's a long silence. Then Hayes's voice, tight with anger. "You what?" "I'm sorry, sir. I can give you a correction heading. We can swing around to the east." "We don't have the fuel for that, Mac. We're already at our turnaround point." Morrison, the bombardier, leans over. "What do we do?" Hayes thinks for 5 seconds. "We're here. We search here. If there's nothing, we head home. Give me a search pattern." Mackenzie plots a grid search. East-west sweeps, 2-mile spacing. The formation spreads out. They drop to 8,000 feet. They fly through rain. They fly over jungle. They see nothing. 15 minutes pass. Fuel gauges drop. Hayes is about to call it off when Morrison shouts, "I got something!" Below them, through a break in the clouds, a valley appears. And in that valley, something that shouldn't be there. Rows of buildings, dozens of them. Camouflage netting stretched over an area the size of 4 football fields. Beneath the netting, the dull glint of metal. Fuel drums, thousands of them. And parked in neat lines under more camouflage, aircraft. Zeros, Bettys, Oscars, at least 40 planes. Maybe 50. Morrison is counting fast. Holy shit, Mac. This isn't the depot from the briefing. This is something way bigger. Hayes comes over the radio. "All aircraft, target spotted. Grid coordinates Romeo 236. Prepare for bombing run." Mackenzie checks the map. Romeo 236. That grid square is 35 miles southwest of Quebec 749er. This isn't the depot they were looking for. This is a completely different facility. Bigger, better hidden, nestled in a valley on the western side of the island, far from where anyone was searching. Intelligence didn't know it existed. The only reason they found it is because Mackenzie read the map backwards. At 3:01 p.m., 10B, 24 Liberators begin their bombing run. Morrison toggles his bomb sight. Crosshairs settle on the fuel drums. The bomb bay doors rumble open. At 7,500 feet, Morrison presses the release. Bombs away. 4 500-pound general-purpose bombs tumble toward the valley. The other 9 B-24s release their loads in sequence. 40 bombs. 20,000 pounds of high explosives. Morrison watches through his sight. Impact in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. The first bomb strikes a cluster of fuel, drums dead center. The explosion is white-hot, then orange, then red. The shock wave ripples outward. Fuel drums rupture. Aviation fuel sprays into the air. It ignites. A second explosion. Bigger. A chain reaction begins. Drum after drum detonates. The entire depot becomes a fireball. The blast wave rocks the B-24s even at altitude. Mackenzie feels the heat through the plexiglass. He shields his eyes. Below, the Japanese aircraft catch fire. Zeros burn. Betties explode. Ammunition cooks off. Tracers shoot wildly into the air. The camouflage netting disintegrates. Black smoke boils upward in a column 10,000 feet high. The bombardier from the second aircraft, Lorraine, radios in. Jesus Christ, the whole valley's on fire. It takes 90 seconds from first impact to complete destruction. In those 90 seconds, 47 Japanese aircraft are destroyed. 6 fuel storage buildings collapse. 200,000 gallons of aviation fuel detonate. The fireball is so intense that the pilots 30 miles away, heading back to base, see the glow behind them. Hayes pulls the Dixie bell into a climb. His voice is calm. Professional. All aircraft, form up. We're going home. Mackenzie slumps back in his seat. His hands won't stop shaking. Morrison looks at him. Mac, you just found the biggest target we've hit in 6 months. By reading the map wrong. Mackenzie doesn't answer. He's thinking about Lieutenant Fisher back at navigation school. Your instincts aren't good. Maybe his instincts weren't good, but his mistakes, apparently, were spectacular. August 18, 1944. Fenton Field, Northern Territory, Australia. Colonel Beasley summons Mackenzie to his office. Mackenzie expects to be court-martialed. Instead, Beasley hands him a glass of whiskey. Drink. Mackenzie drinks. Beasley pours himself one. Intelligence confirms your target was a primary refueling station for Japanese air operations throughout the southern Moluccas. They'd been operating it for 8 months. We had no idea it existed. Our recon flights were looking 40 miles east. You found it because you screwed up your navigation. Beasley pauses. So here's what's going to happen. You're not getting court-martialed. You're getting a Distinguished Flying Cross. Mackenzie stares. Sir, I don't deserve. Beasley holds up a hand. The citation will read that you demonstrated exceptional skill in locating a strategically vital enemy installation. It won't mention that you found it by accident. He looks Mackenzie in the eye. Son, sometimes the best thing a navigator can do is get lost in exactly the right place. Mackenzie flies 43 more combat missions. He never makes lead navigator again. He doesn't ask to. Every mission, he triple-checks his maps. He never reads another map backwards. On April 12, 1945, his bomber takes flak over Borneo. Shrapnel punctures the oxygen system. Mackenzie passes out at 18,000 feet. The co-pilot, Lieutenant James Walsh, drags him to a lower altitude and administers oxygen. Mackenzie wakes up with frostbite on 3 fingers. He's grounded for 2 weeks. By the time he returns to flight status, Germany has surrendered. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrenders. The war ends. September 1945. Terre Haute, Indiana. James Mackenzie stands in Clabber's hardware store, wearing his uniform. The Distinguished Flying Cross is pinned to his chest. The mayor of Terre Haute gives a speech. 200 people crowd into the store. They applaud. Mackenzie shakes hands. He smiles for photographs. Everyone wants to know about the medal. He tells them he found an important enemy target. He doesn't tell them how. After the ceremony, he goes upstairs to the office. His father is there. Ready to get back to work, Jimmy? Mackenzie looks at the ledgers, the inventory lists, the order forms. He nods. Yes, sir. For the next 27 years, James Robert Mackenzie works at Clabber's hardware store. He manages inventory. He orders supplies. He trains new employees. He takes over the business when his father retires in 1958. He expands into plumbing supplies in 1962. He opens a second location in 1968. He's a good businessman. Reliable, steady, meticulous. He never miscounts inventory. He never orders the wrong items. He triple checks everything. Customers say he's the most careful man they've ever met. Nobody knows why. He marries in 1948. Dorothy Sullivan, a schoolteacher. They have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. He coaches Little League. He serves on the town council. He volunteers at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall. He almost never talks about the war. When people ask about his medal, he says, "I was a navigator. I helped find targets." That's all. His wife knows more, but not much more. His children ask once. He tells them, "I got lucky." He doesn't elaborate. In 1972, he sells a hardware store. He retires at age 51. He and Dorothy buy a small house in Sarasota, Florida. He plays golf. He reads history books. He gardens. He lives a quiet life, a normal life, a life nothing like the one he lived for 3 years in the 1940s when he wore a uniform and flew in bombers and once, for 90 seconds, changed the course of an air campaign by making a mistake. February 9, 1987. Sarasota, Florida. James Robert Mackenzie dies of a heart attack at age 65. He's playing golf at the Sarasota Golf Club. He collapses on the 7th green. Paramedics arrive within 6 minutes. He's pronounced dead at Sarasota Memorial Hospital at 2:17 p.m. His funeral is held on February 13th. 150 people attend. The VFW provides an honor guard. They fold the flag. They play taps. Dorothy Mackenzie accepts the flag. The eulogy mentions his service, his medal, his business career, his family. Nobody mentions the fuel depot on Halmahera Island. Nobody there knows the story. The obituary in the Terre Haute Tribune-Star runs 4 paragraphs. It mentions he was a decorated veteran of World War II. It doesn't mention what he did to earn that decoration. He's buried at Sarasota National Cemetery. Section 14, Row C, Grave 47. The headstone reads, James Robert Mackenzie, 2nd Lieutenant, United States Army Air Forces, 1921 to 1987, Distinguished Flying Cross. Every year on Veterans Day, someone from the local VFW places a small American flag on the grave. Most years, nobody else visits. The story of what he did and how he did it is buried with him. Post-war analysis confirms the significance of the August 17, 1944 raid. The facility Mackenzie accidentally discovered was designated Fuel Station Gamma by the Imperial Japanese Navy. It had been operational since December 1943. It stored fuel for aerial operations across the Moluccas, northern New Guinea, and the southern Philippines. After its destruction, Japanese air activity in the region declined by 60% over the following 3 months. The loss of 47 aircraft and 200,000 gallons of fuel forced the Japanese to redeploy squadrons from other areas, weakening their overall defensive posture. Military historians credit the raid with accelerating Allied air superiority in the Dutch East Indies by an estimated 6 to 8 weeks. The facility was never rebuilt. Post-war surveys of Halmahera Island found the ruins still visible in 1946. Charred aircraft frames, melted fuel drums, concrete foundations. By 1950, the jungle had reclaimed most of it. Today, nothing remains except satellite photographs showing subtle rectangular patterns in the vegetation. James Mackenzie never knew the full impact of what he'd found. He received classified briefing reports in 1944 and 1945, but the complete strategic analysis wasn't declassified until 1973. By then, he'd retired. Nobody sent him the documents. He died without knowing that his backwards map reading had been one of the most consequential navigational errors in the Pacific Theater. Here's what the story of James Mackenzie tells us. Sometimes competence isn't about never making mistakes. It's about making mistakes in the right direction. Mackenzie was, by every measurable standard, a mediocre navigator. He scraped through training. He struggled with spatial reasoning. He second-guessed himself constantly. He never should have been lead navigator on a combat mission. But on one afternoon in August 1944, his mediocrity intersected with circumstance in exactly the right way. His mistake led him to a place nobody else was looking. His error revealed something 3 reconnaissance flights had missed. The irony is profound. The best navigators in the 380th Bombardment Group would have flown directly to Quebec 749er. They would have found nothing. They would have returned to base with bombs still in the bays. They would have done everything right and accomplished nothing. Mackenzie did everything wrong and won the war a little bit faster. There's a broader truth here about the nature of discovery and the role of error in human achievement. We celebrate genius. We honor skill. We reward precision. But sometimes, progress comes from the people who don't quite know what they're doing, the ones who make mistakes, the ones who end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, which turns out to be the right place at the right time. Mackenzie didn't find Fuel Station Gamma through brilliance or instinct. He found it through incompetence and dumb luck. And yet, the result was the same. 47 aircraft destroyed, 200,000 gallons of fuel in flames, an air campaign altered. Consider what would have happened if Mackenzie had been perfect that day, if he'd read the map correctly, if he'd flown to the eastern coast as briefed. The formation would have searched Quebec 749er. They would have found the smaller depot that intelligence expected. If they found anything at all, Fuel Station Gamma would have remained hidden. Japanese fighters would have continued operating from Halmahera for months longer. Allied casualties would have been higher. The war might have lasted weeks longer. All because one navigator didn't screw up. That's the strange lesson of James Mackenzie. His greatest achievement was a mistake. His most significant contribution was an error. He spent the rest of his life triple-checking everything, making sure he never miscounted inventory, never ordered the wrong supplies, never made another backward mistake. He became the most careful man in Terre Haute, but in doing so, he ensured he would never again stumble into greatness. August 17, 1944, 2:43 p.m., 11,000 feet above the Celebes Sea. Second Lieutenant James Robert Mackenzie reads a map upside down, and in about 6 minutes, 47 Japanese aircraft are going to burn.